Welcome to the Clean Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Madeline. Life is messy, but it shouldn't be toxic. Whether that's chemicals, relationships, habits, or old ways of thinking, the Clean Bee Podcast is here to help you cut through the noise and release what is no longer serving you. Let's dive in, beautiful. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Clean Bee Podcast. I'm your host, Madeline. This is episode number 18. Honestly, cannot believe how fast time is flying. It feels like I just launched this podcast yesterday, which obviously I'm still super green, but I'm also, I'm just really grateful to be on episode 18 and to be able to have this opportunity to connect with you guys and share topics that I hope you find inspiring and educational and just make you feel a little less alone and a little more connected in your journey. If you're new here, my name is Madeline and I am an integrative health practitioner and vibrancy life coach. I am interested in all things holistic health and wellness in a way that encompasses your whole body. And that is really what this podcast is here for. We are here to talk about the health and wellness in the tangible form, like supplements, gut health, immunity, breath work, you name it. But we're also here to talk about your mindset, your habits, the relationships or people in your life that maybe are no longer serving you. We are going to talk about your vibration and how you can raise it. So I'm so honored to have you here today. Let's cut through the noise together and dive into the details of today's episode. Today's episode is with Ayanna Colden. Ayanna is a spiritual life coach who helps women overcome overwhelm and unworthiness and replace it with a feeling and sense of purpose, establishing inner self-worth, setting clear boundaries, reconnecting to their excitement, and releasing the guilt that they've been experiencing for far too long. She is also an astrology expert, and she combines her expertise in business, mindset, and spiritual practices to create a container that's filled with accountability tools and spiritual healing modalities like astrology. So when I originally connected with her, I was like, okay, we have to talk about all the things, but especially about astrology. It is something that I am so passionate about in the past, I'd say, 1.5 to 2 years that I've just been diving deeper into. And the more I learn, the more I resonate with it. And after talking to a lot of you guys, I've realized that a lot of you are the same. Either you know a little bit about astrology, but not much, or you've kind of heard of the sun, moon, and rising signs, but you weren't totally sure what that meant. And so I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to have an expert come on and really dive into what these parts of astrology are and how you can use it in your life to connect to your purpose and connect to yourself in such a deep way. This conversation with Ayanna was so magnetic. Honestly, you guys, I'm not even going to share any more of a teaser because I just want you to listen to this whole thing. I hope you can feel the chemistry. We connected so deeply and authentically, and I really feel like it just created such a powerful and useful episode, or at least that is my hope and intention with this today. So I really hope you enjoy, and I would love it if you would go to the show notes after you listen to this episode. And if you haven't already discovered your birth chart, I will include a link there in the show notes so that you can enter your details and it will pull up your birth chart. And so that is how you can get your sun, moon, and rising sign. And then you can either do that before you listen to this episode. So if you want to pause really quick and pull that up so that you kind of have an idea of what you're looking at while you're listening, or do it and re-listen to the episode once you have your chart so that you can really get a feel for what your sun, moon, and rising signs mean for you and how that pertains to your life and how you can live in a more authentic and aligned way. I can't wait to hear from you guys and learn what your sun, moon, and rising signs are. I'm excited to hear your feedback on this. And If you feel called to, I would love it if you would share it over on social media. Tag me, tag Ayanna, and let us know what your sun, moon, and rising sign are. One last quick message before we dive into the episode today. If you want to show support for this podcast and the intention and love that goes behind each and every episode, I would be honored and delighted if you would subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It does truly help a small podcast such as mine reach more listeners and expand the audience, which I'm all about spreading the love and raising the vibe. So if you feel called to, I would be honored. And I would love to read your reviews and hear from you guys. It does help me figure out how I can best serve you as well. So if you wouldn't mind, I would appreciate it. And also share with a friend. Share with someone who also wants to learn their sun, moon, and rising, or who you think could use a good, delicious boost of inspiration and motivation today. So without further ado, you guys, let's go ahead and dive into today's episode with Ayanna. Well, I would love to start with just a few icebreaker questions to get everything flowing for our conversation today and to allow the listeners to get a little more of a glimpse into who you are. So I would love for you to let us know what makes you feel inspired and like your best self.
Hmm, great question. So for me, it's honestly deep conversations. I can get so lost in a beautiful, deep conversation, like where we kind of skip the small talk and just go into who are you and who am I and like why are we the way that we are and what have we been through. I can literally have those type of conversations for hours with people that I barely know, and I come out so inspired that I just have to grab a journal or a notebook or voice record myself because all kinds of intuitive downloads will be coming through, complete sometimes unrelated and sometimes related to the conversation, but I think it just opens up this like flow within me. So yes, good conversation will always get me very inspired.
Oh, I love that. And I just have to say, I love your voice. You have such a calming energy and like aura through the way that you speak. And just even what you just said just now, just I felt that and I felt, yeah, I felt your true essence come through. So thank you for sharing that.
Thank you for that compliment. The compliments that are so real just really, really hit home and they feel so good. And one of the things that I help my clients with, and one of the things that I've had to work on a lot myself, is really receiving a good, beautiful compliment like that and just taking a moment to feel it. And so I just want to thank you for it and let you know that I feel it.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Yeah. You just hit home for me as well with that, I think, which we'll dive into so much more juicy, deep goodness in this conversation. I'm sure of it. But receiving, being open to receiving is definitely something that resonates with me as well as something that I'm working on. So thank you for sharing and giving us a glimpse into more of who you are. And speaking of helping your clients, I would love for you to dive in and tell us more about the work that you do and how you came to do the work that you do because as your website says, you use astrological blueprints to support women in remembering who they were born to be, which I just love that. It's so beautiful. So I'd love for you to expand on that for the listener.
Yes, of course. And so, what I mean with an astrological blueprint, maybe let's start there. An astrological blueprint is literally just your birth chart, right? So, many of us have heard about our zodiac signs. I'm a Cancer, for example. I know that Madeline is also a Cancer, but there's so much more to our charts than just the sun sign, which is actually the zodiac sign that we're known by. And so our chart is kind of a blueprint from a point in time at which we were born, right? So I was born at 2 p.m. All of the planets were in a certain position at that time. And so your chart is just a blueprint of where all of the planets were at the moment and time and place that you were born. So I use the interpretation or symbology of this chart as a base to tune into what someone's soul's purpose is. Because in our astrology charts, there's so many hints and nuggets about who we truly are. And it's a really beautiful way to show someone that they have permission to be exactly as they are, to really feel seen and recognized. So that's one of the reasons that I use the astrological chart as a base, that I can let the client know, as well as have them experience that they are exactly as they are meant to be. And then we can move into how can we use this energy to your benefit, how we can we play and work with the energy so that you can actually tap into that purpose that we're seeing and really tune into what it actually is, right? So it's very much about seeing that you are exactly, basically that you're perfect exactly as you are, and that you
Mm.
get to work with your chart. And so I found that for people to just see it in something that is more physical, and then have someone who they don't know interpret it for them, yet it feels so resonant and true and deep, that they're like, wow, it's literally written in the stars. My purpose is written in the stars. The only thing I have to do is put in the work to live it. Right. And that makes it so much less daunting than being like, do I even have a purpose? Or why am I here? To know that there is a plan for all of us and that I'm there to support them in living
Mm. I have so many questions.
it.
I'm just feeling like just such a bubble of excitement to have this conversation with you because astrology is something that, well, me personally, I would say in the past 1 to 2 years, I've gotten more and more interested in. And I think for many of the listeners, either maybe they are experiencing the same, or maybe they've only really known their sun sign. And I think for many years, I astrology didn't resonate with me very much because I only knew my sun sign. I had only seen, the cheesy horoscopes in Cosmo and kind of thought that that was it. And none of it really resonated. And it wasn't until someone actually suggested that I look up my birth chart that just a quick entry of some data and a quick Google search of understanding what a few points meant, it's exactly what you said, like a complete stranger saying something that just feels so resonant and that just feels so powerful and also really freeing. So I'm so excited, and I would love for you to maybe share a little bit of how you discovered astrology and came into this work, and a little bit of your background.
Yes. So um, I was born in the US and moved to Amsterdam. I now currently live in the Netherlands in Europe since I was 8 years old. And it's been interesting because on my life's journey, I'd say as a child, I was always very empathetic and sensitive. And I actually ended up getting bullied for it a lot. I feel like other children can feel when a child is sensitive or a little different. And so I had that a lot where I kept very much to myself and very quiet because I thought that if I didn't say anything or if I wasn't too loud, that I wouldn't be seen, that they couldn't bully me if they couldn't hear me. And so a lot of my life I spent suppressing my true self and really underdeveloping, I guess, what my identity was because I was so busy trying to protect myself that I wasn't really busy developing who I am as a person. And then I think I was around 14 years old that I was in middle school, and in our Dutch in the Dutch middle school, we had English class, but I obviously spoke fluent English because I was born in the US. And so my English teacher would let me like just sit to the side with her while everyone else was doing their homework. And she had this huge like ephemeris astrology book with like all of these dates in it, and you could literally calculate what your rising sign was and look at the day and see where all of the planets were. So she did that for me. And I'd never resonated with Cancer as my sun sign either, especially because a lot of negative things were being said about it. They're like, oh, cancers are crybabies and they're so over
Mhm.
emotional and they can't like deal, like just very negative things, and like I'll leave that patriarchal rant for another day. Um, but basically, this teacher showed me that there was just so much more depth to me. And this was the first time that I had someone kind of speak to me about who I was, especially at a time where I didn't really know who I was yet, right? So it's like these things that I had felt inside of me, but I didn't give permission to come out or come forward because I was just so scared of being myself, that she said, you are those things and you were meant to be those things, and you have permission to show those things. And it really changed something within me where I started showing up more and more. And I still struggled, definitely, because, high school's hard. But I just knew, I was like, okay, but I am exactly as I'm supposed to be. And I guess these other people are exactly as they're supposed to be. And we're just not mashing. And that's fine because I don't
Mm.
have to deal with them the rest of my life. Like our souls will go different ways at some point. And so I became aware of this soul's path. And then I didn't really do much with astrology in depth, at least for years, until it was, I think now, 2.5 years ago, that my grandmother passed away. And my grandmother was really, she was like a mother to me,
Mm.
really like a part of my soul that passed. And I went into this heavy, heavy grief experience where I was just completely depressed, did not shower, like just was unable to get it together because I was so, so sad. And I was also like, it's okay to be this sad, so let me feel the feels and work it through and just experience it. And then the most magical thing really happened, and this was a catalyst for my entire spiritual awakening. I was sitting downstairs with my roommates at the time, and this song came up from Frank Sinatra, My Way. And yeah, that was the song that played at my grandmother's funeral. Literally, the
Mm.
last song before her casket got lifted up into the sky. My grandmother had planned her entire funeral, literally left us notes on pieces of paper. She knew exactly what she wanted from the person who was going to speak, from the people who were going to sing, to where it was, to what she was going to wear, to the last song to which she wanted her casket lifted up into the air. Very dramatic exit, like literally as if she
Mm.
was being lifted up into heaven, and 200 people bawling their eyes out, right? Beautiful, magical. And I was just like, no one else could have planned this better. So thank you for having written that down for us. And and so I hear this song playing, and of course I get so overwhelmed, and I head upstairs because I don't want to cry in front of my roommates. And as I'm just crying and holding a picture of her, I decide to journal about it a little and just express my gratitude for the time that we had together. And as I was starting to feel a bit better and a bit more calm and less overwhelmed, I saw this book that I had taken from her house right after her funeral, as we were clearing the space. And it was a book on personal awareness. And something in me just said, read it. This is a good time to read this book. And I started reading it. And as I opened it, I knew exactly why I had opened it, because it had all of her handwritten notes and highlighted excerpts of the parts that she found most
Wow.
beautiful or interesting, and literally notes where she's like, I don't get it, or this is amazing. And it was literally like I was reading it with her, right? Like I was
Mm.
reading it over her shoulders because I could see what were the parts that mattered to her. And then I realized she had led me there, starting with the
Mm.
song, getting me to go upstairs, right? And then all of a sudden, I'm reading this book, and this book is about personal awareness and energy work. And I was like, she wants me to start working with my energy, to start harnessing it, to start channeling it, to tune into my more intuitive side. And it became so clear for me that there was so much more to this world than I had ever allowed myself to admit or to realize. And that the only thing I wanted to do was to know more. I was like, I need to feel this more. I need to know what this is. I need to experience this fully. I need to embark on this spiritual journey because nothing has ever felt more real, more safe, and more me.
Mm. Oh my goodness. Oh, first, I just need to say thank you for sharing that. I had to mute because I started crying. Um, mm, I feel really connected to you. Maybe it's because what you mentioned before we hopped on of saying a lot of similarities in our chart, which
Hmm.
we'll dive into that more for the listeners. But um, I just resonate with a lot of what you just shared. And first, I just want to say, sending my love and condolences for your grandmother's
Thank you.
passing. I feel very close with um, both my grandmothers, and I feel very blessed that they're both still here. But I think about when that moment will happen, and I think it's so beautiful that you allowed yourself to feel the feelings and feel the grief and allow that to lead you to where it was that she was trying to show you, and how beautiful that there was this book with her handwriting in it that is just
Mm.
so magical. And I also want to just touch and thank that teacher who first sort of took you under their wing, by sort of illuminating this spark that then became a flame later on in your journey. But that is just such a beautiful story. So I really thank you for sharing that. And I'm so curious what the book was that your grandmother had read and written in.
Yeah, so the book is called Personal Awareness by Sanaya Roman. I might be butchering the name, so I'll send it to you afterwards. And it's this series, it's one in a series of three. And today I was actually reading the third one, which is becoming called Spiritual Awakening, Becoming Your Highest Self. So these books are
Oh.
really about, like, they're so spiritual. And it was interesting because I never knew that my grandmother had been that spiritual. I knew she was a spiritual in a sense, but I never knew the depths of it. And now, with my own journey and how in tune I am with exactly those things, I'm like, wow, we have so much more in common than I ever
Mm.
even knew. Like, she had already embarked on a lot of the journeys that I am now going through. And she's been such a huge guide, even after her life, a huge guide in my spiritual awakening and in my connection to my ancestry. And so, starting with, of course, what happened. In the middle school with astrology, the moment that I moved into this deep diving into personal awareness, when I embarked on this research, I really started with astrology again because that was the
Mm.
thing that I knew, the thing that for the first time had given me that glimpse of the spiritual. And so this moment that I had awoken to, oh, I need to understand my energy better, I thought I have to understand my chart better. I really felt like that was going to be the way for me to figure out exactly what it was that I came here to do. And it really became my mission. Like, my mission became to really understand my chart and understand myself. And the things that I could see so clearly, ones that I had already been feeling, but also newer insights, like lighter versions or possibilities, started becoming clear. And I just got so excited that this was my chart and that I got to live it. And it was the first time that I'd ever felt something that I'd heard a lot in the spiritual community where they say, your soul chose this life. And it wasn't until I started working through my chart that for the first time I was like, yeah, I think I did. I think I did choose this.
Wow. Oh, wow. Yes. I love that so much. I think, and I would love what, we'll dive into more just of what the chart is and what people can glean from it for themselves, because I think that astrology, or at least from my perspective, for many years, it seemed like I mentioned, it was just sort of surface. it was something fun that you would read in the magazine or newspaper. Um, but then as I've gotten older and discovered more, I've realized it's such a beautiful tool to understand yourself on a deeper level. And for the listeners who maybe are not so familiar with astrology, maybe they only know their sun sign, I would love for you to describe, maybe this is when we can talk about my chart and you can describe what sun, moon, and rising means, because I know that's a lot, that provides a lot more information for someone, especially if they can easily look up their birth chart and kind of get a better idea. But if you could maybe go into what the sun, moon, and rising sign means, and how people can use that as a tool to dive deeper into understanding themselves better.
Yes, perfect. I think you're completely correct when you say that that is such a good starting point to really start feeling into who it is that you are. Because I consider the sun, moon, and rising are really kind of the pillars of our identity in this lifetime, who we are an expression of, and how we can best express ourselves. And then the rest of the planets are still very important, but they kind of give a flavor and nuance to these three things that are the core. So, indeed, let's start here. So, if I look at the sun sign really depends on the month you were born, right? So every 30 days or so, the sun changes sign. And then when it gets through all 12 signs, that's how we have our calendar year. Then we've gone through the year because the sun has gone through all 12 zodiac signs. So for you, you were born end of June, and that means that your sun sign is in Cancer, right? And so the sun sign, how that kind of expresses as a part of your chart is it's actually a huge part of your purpose. um, but you can't just tell from what the sign is, what your purpose is. You have to take the sign in combination with the house that it sits in. So I
Mm.
won't make it too complicated, but when you go on any type of website and you look up your chart, on, for example, astro.com, you type in your information, your time, your place of birth, you'll see this wheel, this 2D wheel, and you'll see the symbols of all of the astrology signs around it. And then you'll see kind of like these pie, like a pie chart, just like these slices, and the slices will have numbers 1 through 12. Those numbers 1 through 12 represent what we call astrological houses, and each of those houses have a different theme of which area in your life is affected by that zodiac sign and by the planets that are in it. So
Mm.
that's really a nuance that we often don't get in horoscopes or if we're just reading information about Cancer. So, taking yours as an example, your sun is in Cancer and it's in the ninth house. And so, what that means, let's start with Cancer. Cancer is a very nurturing sign. It's a mother nurture archetype of sorts. She always wants to take care of those that she loves and make sure that everyone feel at home and warm and just nurtured. The ninth house is a very expansive energy. It's the energy of philosophers, it's the energy of spiritual beliefs. It's really like seeing the big picture. The teacher archetype comes through in the ninth house, and long distance travel is also a huge part. So this means that those two things, or multiple things that I just named, in combination are already a part of your purpose, right? So it's kind of like implying that your purpose is related to nurturing people with your wisdom, nurturing Cancer, wisdom, ninth house. The belief systems that you learn and apply, you're then able to share back to your community as a teacher and a guide, and you automatically nurture through your words. And also, travel is likely a major part of your identity. Does that resonate?
Wow. I have never experienced something like what you just shared. I know, Cancer is being nurturing and you're a Cancer as well. So I'm sure, we both knew kind of some of those aspects.
Hmm.
But I actually didn't know that it was in the ninth house, but that is, that resonates so deeply, especially the philosopher piece and the
Hmm.
travel piece. I moved away from home at 21, well, at 18 when I went to college, but then left the country at 21. And traveling has been the one thing that just lights my soul on fire, and sort of experiencing other people and cultures and then writing about it and sharing those experiences, I would say is pretty much how I've used social media since I started using social media, which is just really so interesting because I've never had that reflected back to me. So thank you for sharing that. It absolutely resonates.
Yes, I love hearing that. And so, as I was sharing with you before we started, we have a lot of similarities in our charts. And by that, I mean that my Cancer sun is also in my ninth house.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So I pulled up your chart, and before I go into the moon sign, I just love to share this because this is
Yeah.
something that I've really noticed in my experience. Every time that someone comes to me and I do a reading for them, or even people that I interact with, I pull up their charts and I look at it and I recognize right away why that person came to me. Like it always
Oh.
clicks so clearly that I'm the right person to interpret their chart because I have such a deep understanding of what's going on for them. And so, I mean, we met through DCI and we haven't even had much one-on-one conversation as of yet. But the moment I pulled up your chart, I was like, oh, this conversation's meant to happen.
Oh my goodness. Oh, I've just got goosebumps.
Yeah. So it was very, very exciting. And I resonate a lot with those energies because I've been experiencing similar ones.
Mm, that is fascinating. Oh, I'm so excited. I love that you do feel um, that it's, almost magic,
Hmm.
when the universe aligns and brings people together, and you can really just only be in awe of it, of the divine timing and everything. So I'm so grateful, and thank you so much.
Yay, perfect. Me too. So let's go into the moon sign. So the moon sign changes a lot faster than the sun does. The sun changes sign once every 30 days. The moon changes signs once every 2.5 days, right? So it goes through all 12 signs in around 28.5 days, which means it goes through the whole wheel in a month, or as I like to call it, a moon.
Mm.
So exactly, yeah, it's all connected in the end. And your moon sign really depends on the exact day that you were born. So for you, that's the 24th of June. And on that date, the moon was in Sagittarius. What does the moon represent? The moon represents your emotional experience of the world, how we relationship, what makes us feel emotionally secure, but also what makes us feel emotionally insecure is very much related to which sign our moon is in. So, your moon sign in Sagittarius is in your second house. This would imply that you love talking, you love having deep conversations.
Sorry.
Sagittarians love to talk. They have a lot to
Resonates.
say. You love having deep conversations about all the things that bring you emotional fulfillment. And just having deep conversations brings you emotional fulfillment. The second house is our house of possessions. So, really, the things that we materialize around us. So, this would imply that you find emotional security in having things that you value and that you love around you. You have an
Mm.
appreciation for comforts and luxuries. They don't even have to be expensive, but just things like self care. You understand self care to a T, and it's really important. Like, you love to pamper yourself with self care practices because this really fills your emotional battery in all the ways that matter.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Totally resonates again. Spot on. I'm just giggling because we're having this conversation, which is exactly the things that light me up. And I'm curious what your moon is.
Yeah, so my moon is in Capricorn, and this also made me giggle because my moon is only one sign away from yours, meaning if you were born even a day later, we would have had the same moon as well.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
and you mentioned
it's been
before
wild.
we that is so crazy because you mentioned before we hit record that you're from Tampa, Florida, and I'm from
Yeah,
Florida too. So I don't know if
exactly.
that's
And we
part
were
of it.
born around similar times. I was born at 2 something p.m. and you were born at around 3 p.m.
Wow. Incredible. Well, I loved the description that you gave about the moon, because for me personally, that um, really, really resonated when I read, what that sort of meant, and understanding that your moon sign is sort of like your inner world and your emotional, what you have going on inside. So I think that it's just so helpful for people to understand because I think that was a big reason why, and I don't know if it would be the same for you, but that was a big reason why cancer didn't resonate with me. I think for many years is because my actual emotions are not in cancer, they're somewhere else. And I never felt the irritated moodiness, crybaby never resonated with me. But yeah.
Yeah, so I had exactly the same. My moon sign being in Capricorn, Capricorn is actually the opposite sign of Cancer. So it's like they're pretty far apart in the way that they handle things, you know? So the Cancer archetype is very nurturing and motherly and emotional. And the Capricorn archetype is, I guess, more the father archetype, where it's like
Mm.
business, you know, like getting to business, your public self, career, ambition. You know, secure, it's still about security, but it's financial security, it's public security, where Cancer is like security of your home and keeping your loved ones safe. Capricorn is more like security of your assets. And so
Ah.
I was always very ambitious and focused and like going into school. And I was like, I don't resonate with being too emotional to get things done. You know, like I always
Yes.
get things done. That's who I am. I'm a get things done person. But the reason I was a get things done person is because I got emotional fulfillment from getting things done,
Mm.
right? For me, making to do lists made me feel safe.
Yeah. Which how incredible is that to see, it's like you can look back, hindsight's always 2020, but to
Hmm.
look back and just to better understand yourself and know that you were doing these things because like you said, it was written in the stars.
Exactly. And that's why when I heard about my moon sign that time when I was 14, I was like, okay, so I'm actually meant to be making all of these to-do lists. You know, like this isn't weird. This is just a part of how I express myself. And this is something that makes me feel safe to have my things organized, makes me feel secure. And like that's okay. So, really, just a beautiful permission slip. And also in your moon, or in because your moon is in Sagittarius, Sagittarius is actually completely interlinked with the ninth house. So,
Oh,
another layer of why travel is such a huge part of your identity, why beliefs and spirituality and these larger philosophies are such a huge part of your identity, because that's also a part of the Sagittarian archetype, right? So, it's like two for two.
wow. I had no idea. That is so illuminating, honestly. And I just really love the phrase that you just said as well of it being a permission slip. I think that's beautiful. It is. It truly is. And it's a permission slip, and it's also a tool, where you can just dive deeper. So I would love for you to now, I guess, describe for the listener what the rising sign means in their chart.
Yes, definitely. So, the rising sign, it's also sometimes called the ascendant, right? So those are the same thing. If you hear them, if you hear ascendant, don't panic thinking what is that? Ascendant and rising sign, they're the same thing.
Perfect.
So the ascendant sign or rising sign changes even faster than the moon does. It's actually the reason that it's so important for us in astrology or as astrologers to have your time of birth. because the ascendant sign changes on average every 2 hours, and it
Mm.
goes through all 12 signs in one day, every single day. It's based on which zodiac constellation is on the horizon as the sun moves from day to night. So,
Wow.
depending on where the constellation is and depending on where the sun is, that's the defining factor of your ascendant or rising sign. And your ascendant is also the defining factor for your house system, because whatever sign or whatever point your ascendant is on is always where your first house starts. So that really
Oh.
decides how all of your other houses move through your zodiac wheel. And as I've been sharing with you in your moon and your sun, you can see the house system is a pretty important layer of understanding the depths of your zodiac signs, right? Like
Hmm.
that second house and that ninth house really give a bit more flavor to what it means to be a Cancer sun or a Sagittarius moon. So, this is just some of the reasons that I always, even if someone doesn't have their exact birth time, give me an estimation. And I do this thing where I rectify the chart. So, I'll go through some of the options, see where the ascendant would fall in these different options, and then we just have a look at like how your life has unfolded, and we try to retroactively place which sign is your rising sign, because it's
Mm.
such an important way to kind of understand the rest of your chart. And what they say about the rising sign, another reason it's so important, is it's really the first layer of you, right? Your first house is your house of self, your house of who am I, and it's also who people see you as when they first meet you. It's basically who they meet before they get to your moon sign in Sagittarius, or before
Mm.
they even get to your sun sign in Cancer. It's like the person that, if, for example, you're looking at someone on social media, you get an impression of them. That impression you have of them is their rising sign, right? Like you don't know any other layers, but the feeling that you get from someone just from looking at them, that's their rising sign. So for you, in your case, that is Libra. And this is, I guess, another synchronicity of why our charts are so similar, because that's also my rising sign.
Incredible.
And till the detail of, so when you have this wheel, every single sign has 30 degrees in it. And you can be anywhere between 0 and 29 degrees of a sign.
Okay.
And so for you, your rising sign is on the 28th degree of Libra. So quite late in Libra. And for me, my rising sign is on the 28th degree of Libra.
Wow.
So I'm like, I don't know what the chances are of that, but I was just
Wow.
looking at the charts and I'm like, I've never experienced this before.
This is so cool. So what
Yeah,
does that really, I guess, what does that mean?
yeah. So what that means is that our houses are completely synchronized, right? And so what that means is that as the sun m- this as the sun in the sky, okay, we might take a little segue here. As the
Perfectly
sun in the
fine.
sky moves through it, so for example, right now we are in September, so the sun in the sky is in Virgo, right? Babies that are being born right now will be considered Virgos.
Mhm.
um, and so what that actually means for all of us is that we can look at where Virgo falls in our chart, which house it's connected to, and that the theme of that house should be our focus for this month. So you can do really fun monthly planning based on which house the sun in the sky is passing, which house in your birth chart it's passing. And then you can say, okay, this month it's passing my ninth house. And so I'm going to focus on educating myself, learning more theories that I'm interested in, or focus on teaching, or focus on traveling. Like this is a perfect month for me to travel. Or
Mm.
it's in my third house of communication. So I'm going to be posting a lot on social media, or working on my marketing strategy, or communicating more with my partner, or taking this time to communicate with people about things that I've been having a hard time with, or like expressing myself, getting on Clubhouse, anything, writing blogs. So you can actually plan in every single month and your entire year using these different focus areas of the sun as the sun goes through the year every single year. and you always come back to the same house next year. So it's never something that ends. It's never a one-time opportunity. It's a growing experience.
Wow, that is incredible. And I feel like that really, what was coming up for me as you were speaking is, especially in regards to, the houses and how it flows through with each month, is I find that we can be really hard on ourselves. And then being biologically female, we have the added layer of, if we're menstruating and our cycle with our
Mm.
hormones. But it's this, we can be really hard on ourselves on, why don't I feel like doing this right now? I just can't be bothered with this right now. Like, just really frustrated. And then maybe a week later, you feel excited and you're ready to tackle it and take it on. And obviously, many factors come into play into obviously our day to day feelings. But I find it really empowering to know that there's this added layer of this tool that we can use to understand ourselves better and then understand a certain period of time better. And then not only
Mm.
can we use it to maybe plan in a more cohesive and in flow way, but we could also use it to obviously understand ourselves and give ourselves more grace and maybe, oh, maybe this is why I'm not feeling like communicating right now. And this communicating is a struggle for me because of what is going on astrologically. So I just find that super, super helpful.
Yes, exactly. And that's also really what it's been for me, right? So I'm a firm believer in that things like astrology or human design or any of the modalities that people can be using, that they are tools, right? They are guidance tools that we get to use, but we don't have to use them. I genuinely think that if you are super in tune with your intuition, and just like you don't let any external things kind of affect you, and you're just really like, I flow with what is happening for me and what is best for me, that you will naturally flow exactly with what I'm saying about in the zodiac, right? You'll just naturally do more communication when it's the third house, or naturally do more traveling when it's the ninth house. So it's really a tool to help us reconnect with our intuition, not one to replace our intuition. Your intuition will always trump anything that any modality or any chart can ever say to you, because this is really a model to reconnect you back with that inner intuition.
That is so beautiful. And I think is also really important. Really, really important. I think it is, yeah, it can be easy I've talked about this a lot on the podcast of the tendency that we have to want to outsource our power to something outside of us. And I love that you just really brought that home and set of the piece on intuition, how even if you don't know these about this tool, that if you are in tune with yourself and you're hearing your intuition, then you're already likely going in that flow. So I think that's really a beautiful reminder. So thank you for sharing that piece.
Yes, and I find it very important to always reconnect people back with the fact that you have all of the answers. Even as a coach, I am a tool and a guide, right? I am not the answers for you. I support you in finding the answers within yourself. So, on that note, let's circle back to the rising sign. And as I was sharing about the rising sign, it is the person that people see you as first, right? So your sign being in Libra, Libra is a beautiful and harmonious and sociable archetype. So, or archetype, a person who is always trying to keep the peace and keep the balance. She's a natural mediator, and you love feeling and being surrounded by beautiful things. Your ascendant energy is an amazing one to market yourself from, actually, because this is how people naturally interpret who you are already. So when you tap into that Libra energy from a marketing perspective, it feels very authentic to your audience because that's already who they see you as. So you're just making sense to them, right? So it's like soft
Wow.
colors, balanced contrasts, feminine energies, just really like that flowy balance, that type of soft, beautiful vibe, that fairness, someone that people look at you and they feel like you're a very fair person, a very just person, that you would stand up for the underdog where necessary, but you would never unnecessarily seek confrontation. Like that's the
Oh.
feeling that people get from you.
I feel like this entire conversation, I have never felt so seen, honestly. And I think that just shows the power of this tool because like you mentioned before, we haven't really had much one-on-one time at all. This is really our first full conversation. And for you to say all of these things and not even actually know me fully as a person or even in person is just so illuminating and just makes so much sense because I definitely love balance and fairness. That is, I've from a very young age, I've always avoided confrontation, but I also want things to be fair. And people used to call me like they would just say I was diplomatic and wanting to find like the balance, I guess, which is actually the sign of Libra is, I think, right? It's
Yeah, the
the scales.
skills.
So, and also now it makes sense why a clean and organized and aesthetically pleasing home is so imperative to my well-being. I
Hmm.
cannot survive when the home is in disarray. I just need it to feel really beautiful and welcoming and warm and pretty and yeah, so that just makes so much sense, and I love that you shared the piece of from a marketing perspective. That's something an added layer I never thought of before, but I think, any business owner or person that is marketing themselves or their business, that's a really, really useful tool to understand.
Yes, and it's something that I've been deep diving into for myself as an entrepreneur and in my own coaching business has really been to understand not only who am I, but what is my voice to others. And I just realized that it made so much sense for me to use astrology in that. I was like, why would I use astrology for every other aspect of my life and then not my business? And as I was writing out the archetypes, my archetype of Cancer and Capricorn and also Libra, and just seeing how those came together is like all of this makes perfect sense as my brand. Like there's nothing more me than this. So why wouldn't I use that to create my branding? It just makes sense.
Mm. Oh my goodness. I am so excited to like dive into this and I definitely want to have a deeper reading and more conversations with you because I think it's also just really, I think, important for people to hear that seeking support and guidance and knowing that you're not in your journey alone and knowing that there's people there that can help, you have the power within you, but it's also just so helpful to have someone to help guide you. And that's it, sounds like exactly what you do with your clients.
Yes, and I love that you said that. There's really there's no shame in support. And the way that I actually try to see it is I genuinely believe that if we want to, we can all achieve everything that we want to in life by ourselves. Sure. But it's going to take a lot longer. It's going to be a lot harder. There's going to be a lot more trial, error, tears, scrapes, and bruises. And so I often find myself because I'm a self researcher. I love to like go down the rabbit hole and like get into all of the information and figure out what is true for myself and then reframe it. But there's moments that even if that is one of my passions as like a researcher archetype, even though that's something that I really love doing, I can't do everything alone. And even if I could, I don't want to, right? So
Mm,
it's finding what is kind of like effort versus impact. And do I want to be figuring out everything on Google by myself? Or are there certain things where it's like I just want to have the support so that I can truly start embodying that thing that I'm feeling is sitting within me? And I think soul purpose is really one of those things. The sooner we start living our purpose, the better, right? The sooner we all step into our highest vibration of who we truly are, the more beautiful this world is going to be and is already becoming. So I feel like that's definitely one of those things where it's like get as much support as you can from family, friends, coaches, whoever is willing to help that resonates with you.
Mm,
Key in that resonates with you, or that inspires you. If
mm.
there's someone that inspires you and you look at their life and what they're doing and you're like, wow, I'm just so intrigued by it, talk to them, reach out to them. Another way that I like to actually, a way that I check with myself if that's someone that I might be inspired by is envy.
Yes.
Check your envy.
Yes.
Check your envy because this is an emotion that I was always very ashamed of having. I have a lot of comparisonitis, and I was always very ashamed at the fact that sometimes I would be scrolling on Instagram or anywhere else and just see like these amazing women showing up, and that this, what I felt, nasty emotion of envy would come up. And I felt so much shame about that. I was like, oh, wow, what kind of person am I that I see someone thriving and like have the audacity to feel
Mm,
jealousy? And then I started to get curious. Get curious about your jealousy. What is it that the other person is doing that is triggering you right now into some form or state of anger or upsetness? Like, what is happening there? Is it that they are doing something that you have not given yourself permission for? Because that's often the case. An example here would be one of my clients shared with me that she would get really annoyed when she was walking through the living room and her husband was just sitting there doing nothing. She would just get so mad. She's like, how can he just sit there and do nothing? And I'm like, why can't he why can't he sit there and do nothing? She's like, there's so many things he could be doing. He could be helping me, he could be cleaning the house. Like he's just sitting there doing nothing.
mm,
And then I asked her, I'm like, when is the last time you sat there and did nothing?
mm,
Right?
mhm.
And then we realized together that the reason it triggered her that he sat there doing nothing is because she never let herself do
Yes. Yeah. I th it's
that.
something I've talked about before. I actually have like a whole solo episode all about understanding that your envy and your jealousy is telling you something. And I love that you just said getting curious about it because that's really all that it takes. And also thank you for being vulnerable and sharing the experience that you had of scrolling through Instagram and experiencing comparisonitis because I'm willing to bet there's not a person out there that has I think everyone has experienced that. I don't think there's a person out there that has not experienced that feeling. And we do tend to feel a lot of shame around that and we feel judgmental of ourselves. And it really spoke to my heart when you said, who am I to see someone thriving and to then feel this nasty emotion? And wow. Yeah, you spoke right to my core because I have absolutely felt that and getting curious about where that's coming from and realizing that it's either A, something that I'm not allowing myself to do, like you just described with your client, discovering that, or it's something that I wish to achieve or wish to do or
Mhm.
experience or be. And understanding that it's not something to be ashamed of, but instead, I try to, at least in my world, I try to just say thank you, like thank you for showing me that this is something that's important to me, and now I'm going to pay attention to that more.
I love that. I love that reframe. And that's exactly it, right? It's like either we're triggered by it because we're not giving ourselves permission, or we're triggered by it because a part of us, there's something in us that knows that we can do that too. and that we're not
Mm,
yet, right? So now when I feel any type of envy, I'll say to myself out loud, I am so inspired right now.
mm,
Because that's actually what the other person is. Yes, I'm feeling envy because I'm not living it and they are, but I'm also inspired by the fact that they're already showing me that what I want is possible, at least for one person that is living it right now. So they're actually an inspiration, right? They've actually opened the door and shown me that something that I would want for myself is actually possible in reality because someone else is already living it.
mm.
So to reframe it to myself as, wow, I'm so inspired right now, rather than getting mad at myself for feeling envy, being like, what is it that I'm inspired by in this person? And how can I tap more into that within myself? Right? If I'm seeing someone being a successful speaker, how can I speak more, even if it's to my friends or family? How can I show up more for my community? How can I serve more? So, really allowing yourself to feel the emotion, feel it fully, but then call it what it is because it is a form of getting inspired. Right? It becomes envy because we try to suppress it and then we feel stuck and then we're not actioning that emotion, and then there's this disconnect that happens within us where it's like, I want that, but I'm not doing anything about it. And now it's the other person's fault for showing me what I'm not doing.
Oh, wow. That is a beautiful reframe. I love that. I would love to know actually just what's coming up for me is I would love to know what some of your, I guess, daily practices are that you have to help tune you into yourself with your intuition, your inner guidance system, and coming back to self, especially in the
Mm.
realm of social media and the world of comparisonitis. I would love for you to share. I don't know if you have maybe a few tools that you would be willing to expand on.
Yes, definitely. So I am what I'd call a very ritualistic person. I love self care. I love ritual. I love creating practices for myself. And I'm also very mindful of the fact that I'm easily bored. And so I'm continuously evolving
Mm,
the practices to make sure that I actually keep up with them. So, how I've kind of laid it out for myself daily is I get up quite early in the morning around 5:30 or 6ish because I still have a 9 to 5 as well. And I get up early in the morning because it's really important for me to have the first hours of the day as mine. That, like, there's no one else that is inputting their energy into my energy, that I just know, okay, I have at least an hour or two, just Ayanna time.
mm,
And what I'll be doing in those hours, I have a general guideline, but it really differs. So I set this time, like that's my scheduling sense. I have like a list of practices that I've tried out before. That's also that I can basically pick and choose from depending on how I'm feeling and flowing. So an example of this would be is I love to dance in the morning for like 10 minutes, but I don't like to have a set playlist, right? So I'll just have a couple of playlists that have different vibes that I can choose from, and just on in the moment when I start dancing, I'll pick the playlist that resonates with me in that moment.
mm,
And I do the same with meditations. Every morning I do a meditation, but I don't know which meditation I'm going to do until the morning of, right? I leave myself freedom to choose from a bank of resources that I've collected over time. And this is also something that I like to do for my clients. It's like, try new things, don't get too rigid, have fun, right? Because
mhm,
when we don't have fun with these things, it becomes this like, oh, I have to meditate because otherwise I'm just like not a good enough person. And it's like,
mm.
no, I get to meditate. And that is so exciting because who knows what's going to come up for me? Who knows what type of inspiration I'm going to have? Maybe I'll do breath work. Maybe I'll do silent meditation. Maybe I'll just listen to music. Maybe I'll just lay down. Like, I get excited about these things because I'm like, there's
Mm.
so many options and like I get to live them all.
Oh, I love that so, so very much. And I'm also like cracking up because it's just so funny that our charts are so similar and so much of what you say just resonates with me so deeply because it's very similar. I need I need at least an hour in the morning have that time, but I love what you dialed in on the fun and um, sort of more feminine energy
Mm,
piece, because I think so often, especially when people hear the word meditation, you touched on that of oh, I have to meditate because otherwise I'm not a good enough person. And in the self development and personal growth space, there is so many people that share their practices, and I love to talk about what people's morning routines and what their non-negotiables are, because I love to get a little glimmer into what their practices are and what they use to set themselves up for success. But I think what's such a important piece that's also often a missing component in that is that it's what works for that person. And
mm,
each person really just needing to tune into what feels fun and exciting for them, and also removing the rigidity piece like you touched on. I definitely have a tendency to sometimes lean a little bit into the rigid, and I'm really working personally on embracing a little bit more of that open feminine energy and leaning into just more of what feels good as opposed to this is what I
mm.
need to do. So I really find that beautiful. It's almost like you have a little morning self-care menu and you pick from your menu.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. And I remember at some points, because I still do a lot of yoga, but at some point I did a lot of yoga. And I realized that what I was kind of missing in yoga was flow, which seems ironic because it's literally called vinyasa flow, right?
Yeah.
But it was just every move was so structured. It's like you do this one and then you do the down dog. And then from the down dog, you go into the warrior. Or like, it's like, and the teacher is telling you what are the next steps. And yes, of course, you can play with it, but I wasn't really playing with it. I was just doing exactly what the teacher was saying and like trying to do it as good as possible because I have
Mm,
perfectionist tendencies. So trying to do it perfectly.
mm.
And I realized I was like, but what happened to just like moving to move, not moving to achieve flexibility or moving to be a certain way. And that was just really missing from my practice. And that's when I got into more just ecstatic dancing and flowing in the morning and just seeing where my body moved. And when I first started with it, my body didn't know what to do. I felt so uncomfortable and stiff, and it would kind of hurt sometimes. Like I would move my hip in a way, and I'm like, oh, I don't know what that is. And then I understood. I was like, yes, I move so much, I'm a fit person. I work out all the time. I do all of this yoga, yet my body doesn't know how to move by itself. It doesn't
Mm.
know what its own movements are. And I'd never given myself permission to just move unplanned, to
Oh,
just move. And not to move to go somewhere, not to move to achieve something, not to move to get more flexible or more fit, but just to move to move.
movement without an
And
agenda.
exactly, exactly, movement without an agenda. And that's really what dance has been for me. And that has really been one of the main things that has opened me up to this experience of joy. I think because I'm allowing my body to experience joy, it sends me a lot more joy signals now. I just
Mm.
understand like someone will say something and I'm like, let's do that. I think that's going to bring me a lot of joy. Or someone will say something else and I'm like, let's not do that because that does not sound fun.
Wow, that is so beautiful. I would love to know how you practice this morning sort of ecstatic dance routine because, um, again, you're resonating with me so deeply. And this is something that I'm trying to do more of. I actually did last Sunday. So I don't know. Are you a dancer? Like, did you grow up dancing or?
No, not at
Okay.
all.
So I grew up dancing my whole life and I've always loved it so much. And obviously, as you get older, a lot of those things can kind of fall away from you because you're not on dance team. I'm not in college. I'm not professionally dancing anymore. And I realized recently, I was like, Oh my goodness. I am like really missing a lot of joy. And I think I'm missing dance. Like I'm just
Mm.
missing that ignited energy that I get when I just move my body freely. And last Sunday, actually, I took a full phone sort of dopamine detox day. And I was like, no social media. I'll only use my phone for the necessities of, things that I need to do for work. And I came home in the afternoon from doing some work that I needed to get done. And I just felt like dancing and I leaned into it instead of forcing myself to edit a podcast or like work on a content piece that I need to do or work, something else where my sort of overachiever mentality archetype can kind of overshadow. And I just turned on Nina Simone, I'm Feeling Good, which is like one of my favorite songs. And I just like did the biggest dance routine in my living room. And I felt so alive. I actually started crying, which was
Mm.
also felt really random. Um, and I can even just feel like tears wanting to like well up now, even just speaking about it. And
Yeah.
I would just love to know how, I guess, what do you just wake up and then you turn on the music? Like, how are you incorporating this into your life? Because I think it sounds so beautiful and it's accessible, it's free, and anyone can do it. So I would love for you to just elaborate on that practice a bit more if you don't mind.
Yes, of course. And also, thank you for sharing that so openly and vulnerably. I can really resonate with that experience, right? Where you finally let your intuition guide you there, and it's just such a release. The first time that I started doing the dancing and really letting myself go, because first I started ecstatic dancing, but I was really awkward about it. And then the first time that I let myself go, the tears were flowing. And it's like my entire body was thanking me. It's like,
Mm.
thank you for letting me be myself, for letting me
Oh,
just move and be and experience. And so how I like to incorporate it is I can give like a sample of my morning ritual. So I'll
yes.
wake up and I'll have a glass of hot water with some lemon. And then I'll go and I'll sit down and meditate. And the meditation can be anything from breath work to silent meditation to guided or music. I'll see what I feel like. I also record my own guided meditation. So sometimes I'll let myself guide me because it can be really helpful to hear your own voice, at least for me. And after I've gone into the meditation and gotten into a meditative state, then I'm a lot more open and just a lot more free and a lot less judgmental than when I first wake up.
Mm.
So I'll start writing my morning pages. I'll journal 3 pages free flowing, just letting out whatever remnant or stagnant energy is sitting there from the previous night or whatever I haven't meditated out of me, like any anxieties that are coming up. I put them out onto the paper so that I no longer have to carry them. And then once I have that set, I will go dance. And I have an ecstatic dance playlist or a couple that I've made. And with each of the playlists that I do, I always like to start with some type of shamanic shaking or shamanic drumming music.
Mm.
And if you type that in, you can find it, where the first 5 minutes are literally just me jumping up and down and shaking all of my limbs and my head. And you're just shaking the energy out. And also, that really helps remove any remnant nervous energy you might have before you start going into a more flowy dance. And then the songs that come after it will be a bit more sensual, or they'll just be really happy, like songs that I can sing along to that just make me feel really good. And I'll be screaming at the top of my lungs while dancing to the top 2000s and 90s musics, or it'll
Yes.
be a bit more tribal and spiritual. And I'm just like flowing with it, like a bit more like Indian or dubstep, like everything really, whatever music you love, that's the music you should be playing, right? Like don't play um I guess don't play like Indian or Hindu or that type of music just because you think that that is spiritual music, right? Play
Yes.
music that makes your body want to move. If you don't resonate with that music, don't do it. If you do resonate with that music, do it. But it's not about how spiritual the song is, it's about your body just feeling itself.
Wow. That is so beautiful and so helpful. So thank you for sharing that for me and the listeners, because this is 100%, you have completely inspired me to
Yay.
really add this into my morning practice, because it's 100% what is missing. And I feel really excited to cultivate a little playlist and see what comes up for me. And I'm sure listeners at home would like to give it a try as well. So I'm curious, maybe we can share playlists at some point to just see what
Yes.
each other are feeling inspired by.
I love that. Yes, I totally can share my Spotify with you. I mean, it's just under my name, Ayanna Colden.
Perfect.
Um, and it's called Ecstatic Dance. I'm not I'm not that mysterious.
Well, I love that. And I love that you touched on the piece of, thinking to pick a song because we think it's spiritual. I think that
Mm,
is something that is definitely really, really important to bring home for the listener, because I think there are so many practices that it's like, oh, well, I think this is the spiritual thing to do, so that's what I'm going to do. And it's spirituality is such an individual journey and
mm.
experience. And so I think just repeating that is so important. So thank you for sharing that piece.
Yes, of course. And I think it's just always important to help people recognize the fact that you are already spiritual. Like spirituality isn't something that you have to do or that you have to achieve. Spirituality is really just you connecting to yourself, and
Mm,
you're already there. You already exist. So therefore, you are already spiritual and you don't have to prove anything to anyone.
wow.
So just be, allow yourself to be, give yourself permission to be. And that's when magic, like literal magic, happens.
That is such a beautiful, beautiful sentiment to end this incredibly delicious conversation. I have enjoyed this so much. I can't wait to continue talking to you offline, because I feel really connected with you, and I hope that that energy is ringing home for the listener, and that they can take away what they feel resonant with them, and be just inspired to dive deeper into who they are and into their own self more. So thank you for this conversation and for your time and your wisdom and all of your knowledge. And on that note, I would love for you to share where the listeners can get more of you. Where can they connect with you? How can they work with you if they would like to get a reading, and all of that juicy goodness, if you can share that with us now.
Yes, perfect. So you can find me on Instagram under Cosmic Coaching. It's only with one C in the middle because I know it's Cosmic Coaching, but I just turned it into one word. So Cosmic Coaching with one C. You can also find me on cosmiccoaching.com. And on cosmiccoaching.com, also 1C, you can just book a complimentary intake call or send me a DM and let's just connect. I find it really important to have a conversation with someone before they book anything in with me because I want to ensure that it's an energetic match. I find it so important that I can feel that I am the right person to help you and to support you, and that there's just a connection between us to kind of embark on this journey. Because for me, my coaching, it's such an energetically exciting thing for me to do. Like I don't do this for any other reason than that it feels like me and that it feels
Mm,
good to me. And so it's really important for me to maintain that energetic integrity in my practice. So if I resonate with you, if you feel like this is some type of energy that I'd love to get to know more of, send me a DM, book in a free intake call, and we can just have a conversation and connect and see where life takes us next.
wow. Incredible. I will be sure to link all of that in the show notes so that the listeners can have quick and easy access to connect with you. And I just can't thank you enough. I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and I just so appreciate your vulnerability and your authenticity and your time. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. This was beautiful, magical, and pure synchronicity. I'm so, so grateful.
Well, enjoy the rest of your day, beautiful, and I can't wait to continue to speak with you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.